Marcus stared at the symbols hovering in the air, both impossibly ancient and heartbreakingly new. The spiral shimmered like a heartbeat, the circle glowed with cold perfection. He could feel the gravity of the choice pulling at him, not metaphorically but physically, tugging at the particles of his body, as though the universe itself were holding its breath. Jance's hand found his arm. "Whatever you're thinking, don't do it alone." He looked at her, seeing the same fear he felt reflected in her eyes. Maybe that's the point. No one should ever have to decide this alone, but the builders didn't ask anyone before they made us. "And that's why they failed," she said. "Don't make the same mistake." The light in the chamber flickered. The voice of the being trembled faintly for the first time. "The restoration fleet is entering the threshold. They have forced the gate open. You have minutes, perhaps less." Marcus turned sharply. "You said they couldn't reach us." "I said they shouldn't. Their presence destabilizes the construct. The Nexus will not survive conflict." The floor trembled underfoot. Outside the crystalline walls, golden clouds twisted violently, shot through with bolts of dark lightning. The city was shuddering. Jansa pulled up her wrist console. "The shuttle's still functional. If we leave now," Marcus shook his head. "If we leave, everything we've learned dies with this place. The builders vanish. Humanity never knows what it was meant to be." Jansa glared at him. "Maybe that's mercy, or maybe it's extinction." The being raised its arms, and the chamber expanded into an infinite expanse of light. Around them unfolded visions of past and future, humanity's rise from the dust of forgotten worlds, the forging of fleets, the collapse of empires. They saw children on frontier planets building shelters from scrap, explorers carving paths through frozen moons, philosophers debating under alien suns. And woven through it all was the spiral: birth, growth, destruction, renewal. "This is what you are," said the being, "endless becoming." Then the visions shattered, replaced by another, a single blindingly white circle encompassing everything, still and perfect. No hunger, no war, no memory, only harmony so absolute it stilled the pulse of thought. "And this," the being whispered, "is what you might be." Jansa's breath caught. "That's not life. It is peace." Marcus's voice broke. "It's oblivion." The being regarded him silently, the light of both symbols reflecting in its eyes. "Then choose, the spiral of struggle or the circle of peace, creation or stillness, the builders or the unknown." Outside, thunder roared as reality itself tore open. Through the widening breach, shapes emerged, fleet vessels, their sleek hulls trailing iron fire, forced into this impossible dimension by technology not meant for human use. They looked like intruders in a dream, blades of reason slicing through a painting of infinity. Jansa pointed. "They're here," the being's voice turned sharp. "You cannot hesitate. Their arrival will collapse the pattern." Marcus's heart pounded. The spiral pulsed brighter, calling to him with warmth, familiarity, pain. The circle offered quiet, purity, the end of every question. He closed his eyes. He thought of the miners on Corvin, coughing through the dust storms but still singing. He thought of the derelict colonies trying to rebuild, of the lost children learning to plant crops in irradiated soil. He thought of Jansa, her laugh after a long day, her stubbornness, her fear. He thought of the words the custodian had spoken: "We are built of those who dreamed before us." Marcus opened his eyes and reached out. "I choose the spiral." The being's light flared, almost blinding. "Then the cycle continues. May you remember this moment, even when all else fades." The chamber convulsed. A shockwave of golden fire spread outward, sweeping through the city. The circle shattered, its fragments dissolving into stars. The spiral expanded, weaving itself into the fabric of the mist until it became indistinguishable from the air itself. Jansa threw up her arms against the brightness. "What's happening?" Marcus shouted over the roar. "It's rewriting itself." The being's form began to dissolve, voice echoing like a fading chord. "You have chosen to live. The builder's memory will remain as stories, not chains. The pattern is yours now." And then it was gone. The city cracked open, the towers splintering into shards of light that drifted upward like embers in reverse. The golden mist thinned, revealing a vast lattice of stars, real stars this time, the true universe bleeding back into being. Marcus and Jansa stumbled toward the shuttle as the platform disintegrated beneath them. They climbed inside, sealing the hatch just as the deck gave way. Jansa wrestled with the controls. "We've got power, but gravity's collapsing." Marcus grabbed the navigation stick, his movements instinctive. "Aim for the breach." They shot upward as the golden clouds folded inward, the entire construct collapsing into a single point of light. Fleet ships tumbled chaotically through the implosion, their sleek geometry twisting like paper in a storm. One of them managed to fire, beams of pale energy cutting through the mist, but instead of striking, the blasts froze, hanging in midair like insects trapped in amber. Marcus whispered, "Time's breaking." Jansa gritted her teeth, "Then let's outrun it." The shuttle burst through the last veil of light, emerging into the normal void. Behind them, the Nexus shrank to a single golden spark and vanished. Only the faint hum in Marcus's bones told him it had ever been real. For a long time, neither spoke. The stars stretched endless and cold around them, but they were their stars again, familiar constellations, the fractured light of the debris belt above Corvin. Jansa broke the silence first. "So that's it, we save humanity by keeping it flawed." Marcus leaned back, exhausted. "Not flawed, free." She gave a tired laugh. "You realize no one will believe us." "Then we'll show them," he said. "Not the technology, the truth, that we weren't made to end but to begin again." Jansa looked out at the stars. "And if the restoration fleet survived?" Marcus's gaze hardened. "Then they'll learn the same lesson we did, the hard way." The console flickered. A transmission beacon blinked on signal strength minimal but stable. Marcus adjusted the frequency and spoke quietly into the microphone. "This is Marcus Halden of Corvin. To anyone listening, the path is open again. The builders are gone, but their echoes remain. The choice is ours now, don't waste it." Static answered, then a faint, distant voice, "Transmission received." Jansa looked at him. "Who was that?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Someone who remembers." The stars beyond the viewport shimmered, no longer indifferent, but alive with motion, like the beginning of something vast. As the shuttle turned toward home, a single spiral of light unfurled across the night sky, fading slowly into the endless dark. The return to Corvin was like waking from a dream and finding the world holding its breath. The shuttle's descent burned through thin atmosphere, trailing a pale golden flame that shimmered oddly, as if some fragment of the Nexus still clung to its hull. When they broke through the clouds, the desert below glowed with soft light. The excavation site that had begun all this, the pit, the camp, the remnants of the alien structure was gone. In its place, a crater spread for kilometers, its floor lined with fused glass. Jansa leaned forward. "It's all been erased." Marcus shook his head slowly. "No, it's been rewritten." They landed near the crater's edge. The wind that greeted them was still dry and metallic, but the air held an unfamiliar resonance, like distant song. The moment Marcus stepped onto the sand, his wrist console flickered back to life. A new star map unfolded across its display, different from any he had seen before. Constellations had shifted. Sectors long thought lost now pulsed faintly, as though rediscovered. Jansa peered over his shoulder. "That's not possible." He smiled, tired but awed. "It's happening everywhere. The network of gates, the whole pattern, it's coming back online." She frowned. "I thought the Nexus collapsed." "It did," Marcus said softly, "but the spiral doesn't end, it continues through us. Every memory, every action we take now becomes part of it. The builder's technology isn't gone. It's evolving with us." Jansa crouched and touched the fused glass. It was warm beneath her glove. "You think the planet's changing too?" "I think everything is." He looked around the horizon, where small flickers of light now dotted the dunes. At first, he thought they were reflections, but then they began to move, slowly at first, then purposefully. Shapes formed from the dust itself, gathering into crystalline vines that grew across the crater floor, weaving patterns that mirrored constellations in the sky. The wind sang through them, carrying faint tones like harmonics of a language too vast for the ear. Jansa whispered, "It's alive." Marcus nodded, "It's remembering." By nightfall, they had re-established a signal with one of the outer colony relays. The connection was weak, but enough for a rough transmission. The first to answer was a grizzled administrator from the mining settlements on the northern plateau. "Halden, we thought you were dead. There was a surge, half the satellites went blind." Marcus leaned toward the screen. "Listen to me." The surge wasn't a weapon, it was a transmission, a reawakening. The administrator frowned. "Reawakening of what? The network beneath the colonies, the ancient systems, they're responding to us again." The man scowled. "We don't need myths, Halden. We need clean air and working power grids." Marcus held his gaze. "Then you should see your power grids now." He sent the feed from his console. The administrator's eyes widened as his own displays came alive, energy readings climbing across every sector, dormant reactors humming to life for the first time in decades. "That's impossible." "No," Marcus said. "It's what was always meant to happen when we stopped trying to control it." Static cut in, followed by new voices, technicians, settlers, captains of scavenger fleets, all reporting similar phenomena. Power returning, communication channels clearing, terraforming engines reigniting after centuries of silence. The spiral was spreading. Jansa leaned against the console, smiling faintly. "You realize this means the restoration fleet won't be able to hide it anymore?" Marcus nodded. "They'll try, but truth has momentum." He turned toward the viewport. The stars seemed brighter tonight, almost watching. 2 days later, the first fleet vessel arrived in orbit, one of the smaller craft that had survived the collapse of the Nexus. It transmitted a single message, a request for negotiation. Jansa looked uneasy. "You think they're coming to make peace?" Marcus's tone was dry. "I think they're coming to understand how they failed." The ship descended to the crater at dawn. This time, only one envoy disembarked. The silvery armor was damaged, scoured black at the edges, but the figure inside moved with calm purpose. Marcus met them halfway across the glass field. "You survived." The envoy's voice was softer than before, stripped of its old certainty. "Survival was not guaranteed. Many of us were lost in the collapse." "I'm sorry for that," Marcus said, "but you knew the risk." "We did." The envoy hesitated, then removed the helmet. Beneath it was a face younger than Marcus expected, eyes clear but weary. "The others in command are gone. The fleet's purpose is changing." Jansa joined them. "Changing how?" "We saw what you saw," said the Env. "The Builder's world, the choice. When the Nexus fell, we received fragments of the final transmission. It contained not orders, but understanding." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "And what did you understand?" "That control is not preservation," said the envoy quietly. "The more we tried to protect humanity, the more we smothered it. You broke the circle we were trapped in." They reached into their belt and withdrew a small device, a data prism, glowing faintly gold. "This is what remains of the fleet's archive. We want you to have it." Marcus accepted it carefully. "You're giving up centuries of control. We're returning it to those who earned it." Jansa studied the envoy's expression. "What will you do now?" The envoy looked toward the horizon, where crystalline vines shimmered in the wind. "Help the colonies rebuild, learn to be human again." They turned to leave, but paused. "There's something else. The transmission you sent after leaving the Nexus, it's still echoing across the outer relays. It's drawing ships from the frontier, explorers, settlers, people who thought no one was left. They're coming here." Marcus exchanged a glance with Jansa. "Then we'd better have something to show them." The envoy nodded once, then returned to the shuttle and rose silently into the dawn. By the end of that cycle, Corvin was no longer a dying world. It became a gathering point, a place of beginnings. The crater bloomed with structures grown rather than built, crystalline habitats sustained by the energy of the reawakened network. People arrived from across the colonies, engineers, wanderers, poets, families looking for hope. They brought stories of strange lights on other worlds, relics reactivating, landscapes reshaping themselves to new climates. No single authority could claim control anymore. The pattern was alive in every place that dared to dream. One night, Marcus stood alone at the crater's edge, watching the constellations. The spiral of light he had seen after the Nexus now glowed faintly near the horizon, a permanent addition to the sky. Jansa joined him, holding 2 steaming mugs of bitter stimulant brew. "You've been staring at that spiral for hours." He accepted the drink, smiling. "It reminds me of what we almost lost." She leaned against the railing beside him. "Or what we finally found." He glanced at her. "You ever think about the other choice? What would have happened if I'd chosen the circle?" Jansa shuddered. "No, I don't need to imagine a world without noise or questions or you arguing with me." He laughed quietly. "Fair point." They stood in silence for a while, listening to the low hum of the living structures around them. After a moment, Jansa said softly, "Do you think the builders knew it would end this way?" Marcus looked up at the stars. "Maybe they hoped it would. Maybe they finally learned that immortality isn't about lasting forever. It's about being remembered for what you gave, not what you kept." Jansa sipped her drink, then smiled faintly. "So what do we do now, Professor Haldon?" He turned to her, the wind tugging at his coat. "Now we build, not the way they did with control and fear, but with curiosity. We teach people that the spiral isn't a curse, it's a promise." She nodded. "To keep going, to keep becoming," he said. Above them, the spiral shimmered once, as though answering. And far beyond Corvin, across the scattered worlds of humanity, other spirals began to appear, each a spark of life, a memory reborn, a thread in the tapestry of a civilization rediscovering itself. The stars remembered humanity, and at last, humanity remembered the stars. The people of Corvin began calling it the Dawn Engine. No one could say exactly what it was, or when it had first appeared beneath the glassy basin of the crater. Some said it was the last breath of the builders, solidified into a heart of light. Others believed it was humanity's first true creation, an echo of the spiral given form. Whatever its origin, it pulsed now at the world's core, a rhythmic glow visible through the translucent crust at night, breathing energy into everything that grew above. It began slowly. The air thickened, softened, gained color and scent where once it had been thin and metallic. The sand took root, sprouting crystal vines that released oxygen. The ruins of the old mining colonies hummed with power again, lights flickering on after centuries of rust and ruin. Children who had never seen green before now chased luminous insects across fields of blue-glass grass. Corvin lived. Marcus spent his mornings walking the ridge where the desert met the new forests. The glass beneath his boots still held warmth, as if the world were waking beneath him. Each day he found new patterns forming in the soil, shapes reminiscent of constellations, fractal paths that shifted subtly whenever he turned away. The spiral was still at work, unseen but present, a silent collaborator. Jansa met him there one morning, a half-smile hiding the exhaustion in her eyes. "You've been avoiding the council again." "I wouldn't call it avoiding," Marcus said, squinting toward the horizon where the light shimmered. "I just prefer the company of things that grow slowly." "They think you're hiding something," she said, folding her arms. "The data cores, the prism the fleet gave us, they want to access it. They say if we share it, we could rebuild the Alliance in a decade." He shook his head. "The last Alliance built empires on fear of loss. They would do the same again. So what then?" Jansa pressed. "You want to sit on godlike knowledge and hope everyone behaves?" Marcus turned to face her. "No, I want them to earn it, piece by piece, to learn the way the builders forgot how." Her tone softened. "You can't protect everyone from themselves." "I know," he looked up. "But maybe I can remind them what the choice was for." They stood in silence for a long time. The wind carried the faint hum of the Dawn Engine. Beneath their feet, the ground seemed to pulse gently, alive with potential. Jansa sighed. "You've become the closest thing this world has to a prophet, you know." "I'm not a prophet," Marcus said. "Just someone who remembers what it's like to be afraid of forgetting." She smiled. "That's close enough." Weeks passed, and the settlement grew. What had begun as a scattering of tents and salvaged shelters became a living city, a lattice of crystal and steel grown from the earth itself. builders from the colonies arrived, bringing machinery and hope in equal measure. Some came seeking answers, others came simply because Corvin had light while their world still struggled in darkness. The fleet's remnants joined them too. Under new command, they laid down their weapons and took up the work of reconstruction. They called themselves the custodians of the spiral, not rulers but keepers of stories, charged with teaching what Marcus and Jansa had discovered, that humanity's strength was not perfection, but persistence. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the growing city, the custodians held a gathering. Lanterns of living crystal hung above the square, glowing softly with the same golden light that had filled the nexus. Marcus stood at the center, surrounded by hundreds of faces, each reflecting some fragment of wonder. A child approached him, a girl no older than 10, clutching a small carved spiral of stone. "My mother says you found the stars again," she said shyly. "Is that true?" Marcus knelt so their eyes were level. "I didn't find them," he said gently. "They found us." The girl frowned. "Why did they stop shining before?" He smiled. "Because we forgot how to look up." She seemed to consider this, then pressed the little spiral into his hand. "Then you should have this, it's lucky." Marcus closed his fingers around the gift. "Thank you, I'll keep it safe." When she ran back to her mother, Jansa appeared beside him, holding 2 cups of the bitter brew that had somehow become tradition. "You know," she said, "you're terrible at being ordinary." He sipped, grimaced. "And you're terrible at making this drink." "That's why we're friends," she said. "Balanced failure." They laughed quietly together, the sound mingling with the hum of the city. But not all who heard the spiral's call sought peace. Across the colonies, factions began to rise again, scientists who believed the builders' technology could elevate humanity beyond mortality, preachers who claimed the spiral was divine prophecy, commanders who saw in it the promise of a new kind of weapon. Messages arrived daily, each more insistent than the last. Some begged for guidance. Others demanded control. Jansa found Marcus one night poring over the prism's contents in his quarters. The light from its surface cast constellations across the walls. "You promised you wouldn't open it alone," she said. "I didn't," Marcus said. "I asked the prism a question." "What question?" "What happens next?" The holographic patterns flickered, rearranging themselves into a spiral of symbols, pulsing slowly. Within its center, faint images took form, worlds in chaos, fleets clashing, voices rising in prayer or rage. Humanity, once more on the edge of its own brilliance. Jansa's shoulders sagged. "It's all starting again." Marcus nodded. "That's what the spiral means. It never ends. It only changes shape." She knelt beside him. "Then what's the point of all this? The builders, the choice, the nexus, if it just repeats?" Marcus looked up at her, eyes distant but resolute. "Because every time it repeats, we remember a little more. We get closer to choosing better." She held his gaze. "And if we do, then someone else will," he said softly. "One day." The prism dimmed, returning to its dormant glow. They sat in silence, the hum of the dawn engine faint beneath their feet. The following morning, a storm rolled across Corvin unlike any in its history. The sky burned gold and violet, clouds spiraling around a column of light that rose from the crater. Every sensor on the planet flared. The dawn engine was no longer dormant, it was awakening. Jansa raced into the control tower where Marcus was already at the main console, surrounded by panicked technicians. "It's drawing energy from the crust," she shouted over the wind. "If it keeps going, it'll rip the planet apart." Marcus's eyes never left the readouts. "No, it's not destruction, it's transition." "Transition to what?" He turned toward her, face illuminated by the rising glow. "It's becoming aware." The ground shook violently. Outside, the crystalline structures of the city began to hum, their frequencies aligning with the rhythm of the engine. People stumbled into the streets, shielding their eyes as the crater filled with blinding light. Jansa grabbed his arm. "If it's conscious, can we control it?" "We shouldn't try," Marcus said. "We asked for life to continue." This is life answering back. The tower windows exploded outward as a wave of golden light swept through the city, passing harmlessly through flesh and stone. For a moment, every human on Corvan saw the same vision, stars blooming like seeds, worlds forming, civilizations rising and falling in endless motion. The spiral, then silence. The storm vanished. The light dimmed. Outside, the dawn engine pulsed once, then settled into steady rhythm again, but something fundamental had shifted. The air itself seemed to breathe. Jansa staggered beside him. What did we just see? Marcus looked out across the shining crater. The spiral waking up inside us. Inside us, he nodded. It's not just in the ground anymore. It's in our memories, our thoughts. The builders tried to shape time from outside. We'll do it from within. Jansa stared at him in awe and fear. You mean every human mind? Connected, he said quietly. Not controlled, shared. The technicians around them checked their readings, astonished. Communication relays were active again, but now the transmissions weren't mechanical. They were biological, waves of thought and emotion linking settlements across vast distances. Humanity was beginning to think together. Jansa whispered, "You've made us gods." Marcus shook his head slowly. "No, we've just learned to listen." By the next cycle, the change was undeniable. Across the colonies, people began reporting the same dreams. Stars whispering names, forgotten songs returning, lost family members calling across light years and being answered. Knowledge spread without words. Discoveries appeared simultaneously on worlds that had never met. The custodians of the spiral began keeping records of these shared moments, calling them convergences. No one could predict them. They came like tides, gentle, unstoppable, but not everyone welcomed the new order. A coalition of Outer Rim governors declared that humanity was surrendering its individuality, becoming a hive. They called Marcus a false prophet, a manipulator who had replaced faith with pattern. Some of the old fleets began to arm themselves again. When Jansa brought the reports to Marcus, he only nodded. It was inevitable. You're not going to stop them? He looked at her with quiet sadness. How do you stop fear without becoming what it fears? Then what do? We keep building, he said. The spiral will take them where it needs to. Months passed, and Corvan changed again. The city had become a beacon visible from orbit, its lattice glowing like a living constellation. The people had adapted to the shared consciousness. They spoke less, but understood more. Conflicts still arose, but each one ended with a new idea, not blood. One evening, Jansa found Marcus standing at the edge of the crater again, gazing down at the dawn engine. Its pulse now matched the rhythm of his heart. "It's almost like it knows you," she said. He smiled faintly. "Maybe it does. Maybe it's what's left of us from another time." She stepped beside him. "You think the builders are truly gone? I think they became what we're becoming now," he said, "a memory that builds itself." The sky above shimmered. New constellations burned into view, forming a spiral visible even during daylight. The stars seemed closer, warmer. Jansa whispered, "It feels like the beginning of something." Marcus nodded. "It always does." The wind carried the hum of the engine through the valley, a heartbeat that echoed across the stars. The dawn engine's awakening rippled across the known sectors like a sunrise no one could stop. Worlds that had once been cut off by centuries of isolation now shimmered with faint halos in the night sky. Even the dark, frozen colonies at the edges of human space began to stir. Messages, if they could be called that, appeared in the minds of millions. Not words, not commands, but feelings, calm, recognition, belonging. It was as if the universe had taken a long breath and remembered itself. Marcus felt it constantly now. The hum behind his thoughts was stronger than any machine could register. At first, it terrified him, this sense that his own consciousness was no longer bounded by flesh, but gradually he understood. The spiral had never been a design for power. It was an invitation to empathy. Jansa struggled more. She found herself caught between the wonder and the fear, haunted by dreams of losing herself completely. One morning, she found Marcus at the edge of the crater again, sitting cross-legged beside the glass vines that had grown thick around the dawn engine's glow. "Do you hear it?" he asked quietly. "I don't know what I'm hearing anymore," she said. Sometimes it feels like my own thoughts are echoing back at me, but they sound wiser. Marcus smiled faintly. Maybe they are. We are part of something larger now. The builders called it the recollection, every living mind sharing memory through resonance. Jansa knelt beside him. If this is memory, then where do we end? How do I know what's me and what's everyone else? He looked at her, eyes warm but solemn. By choosing, the spiral gives us connection, not control. It shows us what we could become, but it doesn't make us forget who we are. She studied him, seeing the faint golden shimmer behind his irises. You're changing faster than the rest of us. The engine's bonded to you, hasn't it? Marcus looked down at his hands. Threads of light traced faintly beneath his skin, moving like liquid. It's not a bond, he said. It's a dialogue. I think the engine needs a human anchor, someone to translate between thought and being. And you volunteered. I didn't have to, he said softly. It chose. Jansa stared at him, realizing for the first time that he might not live a human lifespan anymore. What happens if it stops choosing you? Then it will choose someone else, Marcus said, smiling sadly. That's how evolution works. The custodians began studying the phenomenon, but soon discovered their instruments were inadequate. Machines could not measure what the mind felt. Data was replaced by intuition. Calculations gave way to instinctive understanding. A scientist on Van IX claimed she solved equations by dreaming them, waking to find them written perfectly across her slate. A child on the orbital farms of Tyan claimed she could speak to her ancestors, and no one doubted her. But the outer colonies grew restless. Leaders who had spent their lives building power through scarcity found themselves irrelevant overnight. When resources could be shared without trade, when knowledge flowed without restriction, their authority dissolved. In desperation, they united under a new banner, the Keepers of Form. They broadcast their manifesto across the network, using words heavy with fear and pride. Humanity must remain human, they said. No mind unbound, no thought shared. We will preserve what we are, even if it means standing against the stars. When the message reached Corvin, the city gathered in the plaza. Holograms of the Keepers, leaders flickered in the air, faces grim, voices resolute. Jansa watched from beside Marcus. They've declared you an enemy of humanity. He nodded slowly. Then they've already forgotten what humanity means. She frowned. They're arming ships, Marcus. They've got old fleet destroyers, repurposed drones, even antimatter caches. If they reach Corvin, they won't reach us, he said. They'll reach themselves. What does that mean? He turned to her. Every time we've faced extinction, it's because we tried to define humanity by its limits. The Keepers will learn what happens when you draw lines in a living pattern. The attack came without warning. A fleet of 50 ships dropped from orbit in perfect formation, their weapons charged, their engines howling. The sky over Corvin lit, with streaks of plasma and antimatter shells. But when the first wave reached the atmosphere, something impossible occurred. The dawn engine pulsed once, bright as a second sun, and every weapon simply unraveled. The energy scattered into harmless ribbons of light, which drifted down like fireflies. From the ground, it looked like a miracle. From orbit, it was terror. The Keepers' commanders screamed for retreat, but their systems no longer obeyed. Every console displayed the same image, a spiral turning slowly, accompanied by a voice, not heard through speakers, but inside their thoughts. You cannot destroy what remembers you. The ships stopped firing. Some powered down entirely. Others turned away, their crews weeping silently. On Corvin, Marcus stood in the crater, the light of the engine pouring through him like a halo. The people watched as he raised his hands, and the invading fleet dissolved into thousands of motes, each drifting toward the horizon like glowing dust. When they touched the ground, they grew, sprouting into crystalline obelisks that sang softly in the wind. Jansa rushed forward as the light around Marcus dimmed. He swayed, exhausted. Marcus, what did you do? I didn't do it, he murmured. We did. You mean the spiral? He nodded weakly. It acted through us. It doesn't fight with destruction. It changes the meaning of what it touches. The city was silent for hours after that. People wandered among the new obelisks, listening to their faint songs. Some swore they could hear the voices of those who had attacked them, now peaceful, speaking of stars and oceans they had never seen. Days later, Jansa sat by Marcus's bedside. He had not woken since the event. The doctors said his vital signs were normal, but his brain activity was unlike anything human, patterns shifting faster than any scanner could track. Outside, Corvin thrived. The dawn engine glowed steadily. The people had begun calling Marcus the Listener, believing he had become a bridge between the human mind and the engine's consciousness. Jansa didn't know what to believe. She only knew that he had given everything to protect them. One evening, as she sat there, his eyes opened. The golden light within them was brighter now, but gentle. "You stayed," he said, voice faint but clear. She gripped his hand. "You gave me no choice." He smiled. "Then the spiral chose well." She blinked back tears. "Don't you dare turn into some myth, Marcus. I need you here, not in a story." "I'm still here," he said, "but I see farther now. The spiral is not finished. It's reaching beyond even this galaxy." Jansa frowned. "Beyond, there are no other colonies that far." He shook his head. "Not colonies, worlds like ours. Civilizations caught in their own spirals, waiting for someone to remind them they're not alone." Her breath caught. "You think we're going to connect with others?" "I don't think," he said softly. "I know. The Dawn engine is a seed. The builders left it so the universe could learn to dream together." He closed his eyes again, smiling. "It's already begun." In the following months, strange signals began to arrive from deep space. They weren't radio waves or standard transmissions. They were harmonics, patterns in light and gravity itself, echoes that matched the spiral's geometry. The custodians confirmed what Marcus had said. Other networks existed, scattered across the stars, awakening one by one. Humanity stood on the edge of first contact, not with aliens in the traditional sense, but with minds evolved in parallel, reaching out across cosmic distance. The people of Corvin gathered at the Dawn engine once more, watching as it pulsed in response to the signals. Each beat of its light sent waves across the sky, and in those waves were images, vast oceans of other worlds, creatures of thought and song, civilizations made of color and sound. Jansa felt tears on her face as she looked up. "They're beautiful." Beside her, Marcus stood again, stronger than before, the golden light now a constant shimmer beneath his skin. "They've been waiting for us. For humanity, for anyone who remembers what it means to keep going." He looked at her, eyes shining. The builders weren't the first to make the spiral. They were just the first to pass it on. When the signals converged, the night sky of Corvin transformed. Constellations rearranged themselves into a single, vast spiral visible from every hemisphere. It wasn't merely an image, it was a doorway, a bridge between worlds. The Dawn engine pulsed in rhythm, and the ground beneath their feet thrummed like a heartbeat. The people of Corvin felt the invitation in their minds. "Step forward." Marcus turned to Jansa. "It's time." She hesitated. "We don't even know what's on the other side." He took her hand. "That's what makes it human." And together they walked into the light. The light did not burn. It folded. Marcus felt the fabric of existence curl gently around him, not like fire, but like water, warm, infinite, aware. His mind expanded until thought and perception were the same act. He was no longer standing on Corvin, and yet he could feel the weight of the planet, the hum of the Dawn engine, the millions of lives breathing in rhythm below. Jansa was beside him, though her form shimmered like reflection on the surface of a lake. Her voice reached him not through sound, but through shared intent. "Are we alive?" "Alive," he answered, marveling at how the word itself seemed to sing. Just beyond the boundary we knew. Around them, the spiral unfolded as a vast, translucent architecture of light. Each strand was a memory, each node a world. Stars burned at intersections like thoughts crystallized into suns. In their motion, Marcus saw patterns that hinted at intelligence older than galaxies, currents of purpose flowing across cosmic time. Jansa turned slowly, her awe palpable. "This isn't a place." "No," Marcus said, "it's a conversation." The spiral pulsed once, and new images bloomed before them, vast oceans of light shaped like voices. They were not beings in any physical sense, but harmonies, intelligences woven from gravity and radiation, their awareness expressed as movement through pattern. Marcus could sense their curiosity as clearly as touch. A single thread of light extended toward them, halting just beyond reach. Its tone was soft, patient, inviting. Marcus stepped forward. When his consciousness brushed the thread, a flood of impressions filled him, stars dying, worlds rising, civilizations emerging and fading like breath. The entities had watched it all. And now they watched humanity, newborn in their eyes, standing for the first time beyond its cradle. Jansa gripped his arm. "They're asking something." "Yes," Marcus said. "They want to know what we've become." He took a slow breath. "And I think they want to know if we're ready to join them." Far below, on the surface of Corvan, the dawn engine burned with steady rhythm. The people gathered around it as waves of light rippled outward, painting the sky in aurora-like spirals. Some fell to their knees, others reached up as if trying to touch the pattern itself. Across the colonies, similar phenomena appeared. On worlds separated by centuries of distance, skies shimmered in synchrony. In laboratories, scientists abandoned instruments and simply listened. In temples, prayers blended with equations. Humanity was no longer scattered. It was one chord, resonating in harmony. Within the spiral's luminous expanse, Marcus spoke, or perhaps thought, or simply existed as the concept of speaking. "We are the children of collapse," he said, and the words became ripples of golden light. "We inherited a universe filled with ruins and silence. We feared it, tried to master it, and nearly erased ourselves. But we learned. We remembered that survival means more than breathing. It means connection." The great entities pulsed in response. Their colors shifted, deepening into shades unseen by any human spectrum. Marcus sensed acknowledgement, but also challenge. Jansa stepped forward. "You ask if we are ready. We are not completely. But we are willing. That's what makes us what we are." A low harmonic spread through the spiral, like distant laughter mixed with thunder. The entities seemed pleased. The architecture around them brightened, revealing vast bridges of light stretching toward other galaxies, other spirals. Each bridge pulsed with patterns similar to those of the Dawn engine. Marcus realized what he was seeing: other networks, other civilizations that had reached this threshold. The builders had not been unique. The spiral was universal, a language for all who sought to become more than survival. But something troubled him. One of the bridges flickered irregularly, its rhythm broken, collapsing inward. The light around it dimmed, replaced by spreading darkness. Jansa noticed too. "Is it dying?" Marcus reached toward it with his mind, feeling echoes of struggle, billions of voices fading into entropy, their spiral collapsing under its own weight. "They're losing themselves," he whispered, their patterns unraveling. The entities turned their vast attention toward the failing bridge. In that moment, Marcus felt a collective sadness so profound it reshaped his understanding of compassion. The spiral was not just a design for evolution, it was a promise of guardianship. He understood what the entities wanted. They weren't gods inviting humanity upward, they were asking for help. Jansa's thoughts brushed his. They can't reach it alone. They need someone who still remembers imperfection. Marcus nodded slowly, someone human. He looked toward the failing bridge and spoke with a voice that resonated through every frequency of the spiral. "Show us the way." The light folded again. For a moment, Marcus felt as though he were falling through an ocean of time. Then his feet touched ground. He stood beneath a darkened sky. The air was thin, dry, metallic. Around him lay the remnants of a civilization that had once reached for the stars, towers of glass shattered, monuments toppled, entire continents scarred by what looked like memory turned to stone. Jansa appeared beside him, disoriented. "Where are we?" Marcus looked around. Another world, another spiral. The horizon flickered faintly, like dying embers. Above, the stars were dim, their light struggling to pierce a haze of dust. He could feel the absence of connection, the void where song should have been. They began to walk. Every step echoed through silence that felt ancient and hungry. The ruins whispered faintly in their minds, echoes of a people who had once known unity, then forgotten it. As they moved deeper into the ruins, faint images surfaced, memories not their own, tall figures of translucent skin and many-limbed grace, building wonders of light and thought. They had reached their own dawn engine once, perhaps long before humanity existed. But something had gone wrong. Jansa stopped before a broken monolith etched with spiral patterns. They tried to hold it too tightly, she murmured, tracing the grooves. They turned connection into command. Marcus nodded, and when one voice demanded obedience, the others went silent. He knelt, placing his hand on the cracked surface. The memory flared, an entire world choosing uniformity, sacrificing individuality for stability. For a while, they had peace. Then their pattern collapsed inward, suffocating under its own symmetry. Jansa whispered, "They became perfect." And perfection, Marcus said, is death. He stood, determination hardening in his chest. We can still reach them. The spiral remembers every echo. If we remind them of imperfection, they might awaken. Jansa smiled faintly. Only you would call imperfection a gift. It's the only one that lasts, he said. They joined hands, standing amid the ruins, and opened their minds. The light came again, fragile, flickering, uncertain. Through it, Marcus reached for the remnants of the lost civilization. He felt cold minds, long dormant, stir at his touch. He showed them images, children laughing on Corvan, storms clearing, hearts breaking and mending. He showed them choice, and slowly the darkness began to breathe. Marcus focused on the remnants of the lost spiral, feeling the fragile threads of consciousness stretch and tremble beneath his touch. The light pulsed faintly, hesitant, as if unsure it could trust a visitor. He reached deeper, allowing memories of humanity, the laughter of children, the labor of colonists, the hope that had driven explorers across starfields to flow into the void. Jansa mirrored him, letting the warmth of life from Corvan bloom through her mind. Together they wove the memories into the spiral, a tapestry of imperfection, persistence, and choice. The dark expanse shivered. Threads of the lost civilization began to pulse again, slowly at first, as if waking from a centuries-long slumber. Marcus saw faces emerge in the patterns, figures tall and slender, some almost transparent, others resembling familiar human shapes. They blinked, uncertain. Jansa spoke softly through the shared connection, sending not words but understanding. You are remembered. You are not alone. The entities stirred. Their vast harmonics filled the ruined skies, hesitant, cautious. Marcus could feel their skepticism. They had tried to achieve perfection, and perfection had failed them. He did not condemn them. Instead, he offered choice, the essence of human imperfection, the courage to persist despite doubt and fear. A pulse of light shot through the spiral, breaking the darkness in jagged streaks. Slowly, the civilization's structures began to shimmer, not as they once were, but as they could be: fluid, alive, adaptive. Cities rose from the ruins, composed of light and thought, responding to the rhythm Marcus and Jansa had established. It's working, Jansa whispered. They're remembering themselves. Marcus nodded. Not just themselves. They're learning to remember together. For hours or perhaps days, for time seemed irrelevant here, the two walked among the awakening cities. The lost civilization's minds hesitated at first, cautious and fearful, but gradually they reached for one another, weaving the human concepts of empathy and curiosity into their own understanding. The spiral began to stabilize, no longer fragile, no longer collapsing inward. Above, the stars shifted. Bridges of light appeared between the reawakened spiral and the dawn engine back on Corvan. Marcus realized that humanity and the lost civilization were now linked, not as masters or servants, but as co-creators. The universe had found resonance. Jansa took his hand. "Do you feel that?" "I do," Marcus said. "It's harmony, not control, not perfection, just becoming." The civilization pulsed brighter. The entities, once distant and inscrutable, responded with warmth rather than scrutiny. The spiral had succeeded where the builders had failed, not in creating order, but in sustaining life through choice. The spiral stabilized, its light no longer flickering but flowing in steady waves across the ruined world. Marcus and Jansa stood at its center, feeling the pulse of countless minds, human and otherwise, resonating in unison. The lost civilization's thoughts intertwined with their own, not replacing individuality, but expanding it, an infinite echo of memory and choice. Marcus looked to Jansa. "We've done it," they remember themselves and us. She nodded, awed. "It's more than I imagined. The spiral, it's alive everywhere now." He could feel it, the dawn engine on Corvan, the awakening worlds, even the distant colonies now connected through resonance. The spiral had become a living network, a conduit for shared understanding and growth. "Do you think humanity is ready?" Jansa asked quietly. Marcus's gaze turned outward, toward the faint bridges of light stretching between worlds. "We already are, not because we are perfect, but because we are willing to become more than ourselves." A vibration coursed through the ground beneath them. The civilization around them shimmered, as if acknowledging his words. Figures emerged, tentative but graceful, their forms glowing with the luminescence of the spiral. They spoke without sound, but their thoughts reached Marcus clearly. "We understand. We wish to learn. We wish to grow." The entities that had once seemed indifferent now pulsed with approval. Their voices, harmonics of light and gravity, were gentle, asking Marcus and Jansa not to lead, but to guide, to show the value of choice, imperfection, and perseverance. Marcus smiled. "We can do that, together." The spiral expanded, stretching its threads toward the stars. Human minds reached across the void, touching the consciousness of other civilizations, offering the same gifts Marcus had offered the lost world: curiosity, empathy, and the courage to continue even when failure seemed inevitable. Jansa took his hand. "And the builders, did we finally surpass them?" Marcus looked at the spiral, alive with the energy of countless civilizations. "We didn't surpass them. We remembered what they forgot. Life is not about control or perfection. It's about connection. It's about becoming." The sky above brightened as the spiral's light spread across planets, illuminating cities, oceans, forests, and deserts. People everywhere felt the same rhythm, the same pull to connect, to create, to remember. Humanity had not conquered the universe, it had joined it. And then the dawn engine pulsed one final time, sending a ripple through every connected mind. Marcus and Jansa felt themselves lifted, not in body, but in essence. They became conduits of memory and hope, their thoughts merging with the spiral, not as individuals, but as participants in the ongoing song of existence. Jansa whispered, "We are part of it now." "Yes," Marcus said, "and so is everyone else who chooses to keep going." In the distant void, other civilizations felt the same pull. Bridges of light stretched endlessly, each a promise: we remember, we endure, we become. The spiral was no longer a single place or a single people. It was a network of life and memory, an endless rhythm of growth and change. Humanity had joined it, not by force, but by choice. And in that moment, Marcus realized the truth the builders could never grasp. The future was not a circle of perfection, nor a spiral of struggle. It was a vast, living tapestry of minds, hearts, and dreams, endlessly weaving, endlessly becoming. Above Corvan, the sky burned with countless spirals of light, each one a heartbeat of civilizations connected, remembering, and thriving. Marcus and Jansa stood together, watching, knowing that they had not simply survived. They had ensured that life, in all its chaos and beauty, would continue to reach for the stars. The universe remembered humanity, and humanity, at last, remembered itself.